Hello everyone, it's Helen here with Health and Hope with Helen. Thanks for joining me. So it's been at least 10 days since I made my last video. I only know this because I have been battling COVID for the last 10 days. And so if this doesn't give it away, I don't know what else will. On a serious note, it was really, really bad. In fact, I'm still recovering from it. And so I wanted to share my story about the Omicron. My whole entire family, plus several friends, came down with this particular virus over the last couple weeks. And so we all got hit really hard, especially here in my household. All right, back a year and a half ago, we had the COVID, and it was really early on, still like here where I'm from, where just a lot of people were just starting to get it, and they were still tracing people. You were still getting the phone calls to see like, okay, who have you been around? Where do you work? You need to do the quarantine, 14 days. So it was early on. And so it was at that point in time, there was a lot of unknowns with it. I remember originally when we first got it, we had like a sore throat, a little bit of a runny nose. After a few days, we ended up getting more of a high fever, the body aches, the headache, the earaches. We lost our taste and smell. I lost mine for about 6 weeks. So I remember it being quite the virus, and I knew that my body had never experienced anything like it, even though I had had other things that I would almost say that I felt like were a little bit worse. I've had like really, really bad flus that I would have said were probably a little worse than that. It was still different, and it was still a lot, and I remember it just being something that I didn't want to experience again. So up through this point, though, we have been blessed, and we hadn't gotten the COVID again. So a year and a half out, we had been around several other people who had had it. We both work in the public, and so we were just blessed. We hadn't gotten sick, and in fact, I got a little cold over Christmas, and I would have swore that it was the Omicron because people had been talking about like, hey, it's not quite as severe, and people who are getting it, they're not getting quite as sick, and it's more just like your common cold. And so I was convinced over Christmas break that I had it. It was done. We were good. Well, apparently not, because this was not a common cold. It did not affect my body that way, nor my husband's, nor my son's. So we all got extremely sick, but it did start off a little bit of a mild form. So this is what I wanted to share with you. Okay, so originally when I started not feeling good, I had just a tinge of a sore throat, and I had a headache. And that was kind of the tall tale sign, was the headache, because that headache that you have when you've had the COVID, it's the worst headache ever. And in fact, it was like taking up the whole backside of my head. And I was thinking, oh my goodness, what is going on? Because it was just a headache, and then it was a little sore throat. And then within a day, I started diarrhea. Okay, I know, TMI, but I'm just telling you my symptoms so you know what to look for. So here I am thinking to myself that I'm coming up with maybe like an influenza. I was thinking like, well, maybe I'm getting the flu, the stomach flu, because with that headache, just a little tinge of this. And nobody else in my house at that time was sick. So I was just like, wow, everybody else seems to be fine here. My son is fine. My husband's good to go. So it just must be me. I've just come down with a little tiny bug, and how could it be anything else? Because, I already had the Omicron at Christmas, I thought. Well, come that Friday, all of a sudden, my husband was not feeling good. He happened to be out of town, and he's like, I'm heading home. I'm sick. Something's not right. I'm feeling off. I'm feeling kind of dizzy. I'm having belly issues. And so I'm thinking, oh no, I think maybe he has the flu. And so my son and I had kind of been messaging that day, and then he tells me like, I'm not feeling that great either, but I thought that I was dealing with some heartburn, like, some chest pain, some like tummy stuff. And so I went and picked him up from school that day after school, because at this point he had been like feeling fine. And then by the time we got done with his after school thing, he was like, I think I'm going to need to go to the hospital. And I'm like, hospital? That escalated quickly. I didn't even know what was going on. At this point, I knew that my husband was returning from his road trip. I knew I still wasn't feeling great, but was just convinced that I had a tummy bug. And now all of a sudden, my son is telling me that he thinks he's going to have to go to the hospital, to the ER. And he's actually like having a full-on anxiety attack, talking about my chest is hurting. I'm not feeling good. Something's wrong. And so then I tell my husband, I'm like, I think we might have COVID. I don't know. Something's not right. And he wants to go to the emergency room. And he's like, hey, I'm going to be there in 45 minutes. Get him home, get him calmed down, and then I'll be there and we can decide what we want to do. So we get him home. He lays in bed. He's stripping off his t-shirt, everything known to man. Him and both his girlfriend, both were not feeling good. And so he's just like, oh no, I'm not feeling good. And she's like, I'm not feeling good. And so here all of a sudden it's happening really, really fast. My husband gets home. He says, let's take him to urgent care. I'm going to take him over there. You stay here. And I'm going to go get him swabbed and see if potentially maybe he has the COVID. And so they said, if you can get here by 7:15, we'll be able to test him tonight. Well, they get him over there, they test him, and bingo, ding, 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 he's positive for COVID. So automatically I knew. I was just like, oh no. I'm like, is that what I've been dealing with, over the last few days? Because even then I thought, well, if that's all I was dealing with was this bad headache, which I remembered that from the first time, and a little bit icky belly and sore throat, well, I guess that's not the worst, because I had already been sick for a couple of days. Well, that was not the case for me. That was just the beginning for all of us. Because after that point, over the course of the next few days, we all started to get extremely sick. Not only were we dealing, obviously, with the headache, the sore throat, and the icky bellies, we all of a sudden now were dealing with high fevers, congestion, body aches, chills, chest pain, dry cough. Let's see what else. Oh, sinus. I ended up getting a massive sinus infection. In fact, I ended up getting so sick that, ta-da, that is what it is. I have an IV port in my arm right now. So I have been going for the last several days to get antibiotic infusions in my arm so that I don't get any sicker. And tomorrow is my last day of receiving my antibiotic. And I'm a little bit nervous, to be honest with you. I've been praying a lot about it, and I'm hoping, and I've seen what God has done even just over the last few days. I mean, he has miraculously came in like a flood. I feel like 1,000 times better now that I have had some good medication, some rest, and a lot of people praying for me. But tomorrow is my last dose. But the doctor did say today that we'll see. I may have to do a few extra days. We're just going to have to go with the flow and see, because they definitely don't want me getting pneumonia. So guys, this is a real deal virus. And I know that it affects everybody differently. And my son ended up on antibiotics because what they said is that they're seeing that a lot of the teenagers with this particular one, the Omicron, they are seeing that if they even come in and their ears are a little bit pink, within a couple of days, they're having full-blown ear infections, potential ear ruptures. And so the minute they even see any pink in there right now, they're like, we're prescribing an antibiotic. And they said that his had already passed the point of being pink. It was red. So right when they seen him that night, when he tested positive, they were like, he needs to get on an antibiotic. And then my husband, same thing. And then obviously we've seen what happened to me. So we all got pretty extremely sick from this. Now, on a positive note, my husband is doing much, much better. Even though he still tested positive yesterday, he is still doing really, really well. And apparently you can test positive up to 90 days plus after you've had this. So that's not unusual anymore. So you may not be symptomatic anymore. You may feel a ton better, but you may still test positive. So we're learning something new every single day, because this work was thinking that he couldn't come back until he had a negative test. And then they did a little more research, and then they had to inform him like, wow, I guess you could have this showing up for the next 90 days. So you can come back as long as you're willing to, wear a mask, follow protocol really, and you don't have any symptoms, so on and so forth. And so he will be able to return to work. We're praying that my son will be able to go back to school on Monday. He's already missed a full week of school, but he's still kind of just getting there. And then me, like I said, we're hoping to get this guy out tomorrow, or maybe here in the next few days, so that I can start to get back to hopefully some normalcy myself too. But it sounds like there's just some long haul symptoms to this. And so I'll definitely keep you guys in the loop and keep you posted on what I'm experiencing. I know for certain obviously, with having this particular virus, I have been extremely tired. We all know this, who's ever had the virus, which is most everyone at this point, especially some form of the COVID, whether you had the Delta, the original, the Omicron, all of them. There's the fatigue. There's a lot of fatigue. And I'm pretty certain that whatever variant you've had, you've dealt with the fever. And the only thing, like I said, that was a little bit different for this one that I guess the doctors have even seen and heard, the minute that you start saying, I have a headache and I have diarrhea, they've been able to say like, oh, it's this one. So there are some like little tiny differences in between the three of them so far. So anyways, I just wanted to share my story. Please pray for me. I definitely appreciate you. And I thank you for tuning in. And I hope everyone out there is staying healthy and whole. God bless.